Voice of Yoga.
Welcome to the Institute for Personal Development, Kriya Yoga Ashram, where total consciousness is the new frontier.
Kriya Yoga is union of the individual with the divine. Join us as we explore the practices to initiate this process.
Good morning. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. Let's talk consciousness. I am your hostess, Lisa Winton, and with me is Kenny Toy, also known as Swami Jayananda, founder of the Institute for Personal Development, located here in Hampton, New Hampshire. Good morning, Swami. Thank you for being here today. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing pretty good today. How about you?
Well, I'm doing pretty good today, too. Thanks for asking. And we'd like to thank you all for tuning in. Today on the Voice of Yoga, we will talk about the omnipresence of the divine creation everywhere, always, and at the same time unknown to human consciousness. In this podcast, we will discuss Mary Baker Eddy's statement, "You render the divine law of healing obscure and void when you weigh the human in the scale with the divine, or limit in any direction of thought the omnipresence and omnipotence of God." End of the quote. Listeners, we explore the possibilities found when truth in consciousness resolves things into thoughts and exchanges the objects of sense with the divine idea. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. We are talking consciousness. Join the Kriya Yoga Spiritual Advance to get the light in your soul and reflect divine perfection. So the title of today's podcast is Rendering the Divine Law Void. So what do you mean by using that phrase, rendering the divine law void?
Yeah, it puts the responsibility right back on us. Spirit is the only reality, and it's invisible and intangible to corporeal sense, which begins to sink into consciousness. Everything visible and tangible, or invisible and tangible, isn't real. Persons, places, things, and thoughts are what Jesus calls the sin. What in Kriya Yoga we call avidya, or ignorance, which when understood means mistaking the impermanent for the permanent, or the concept of sin, which is missing the mark. We're in the wrong self. The concept of religion is to relink with the right self. But the institutions that took over religions have failed so bad, we no longer link the form to the act and remain in the belief of a mortal sense of life. In essence, what we're doing is we're living in sin. But we think if we're good humans, this is the way that it's going to work. And it doesn't. And yet we don't really challenge what it is that we are doing. And so it's important to understand what we're talking about here. Mortal sense renders the divine law void and obscure.
Swami, getting to that first line of our summary, we stated the omnipresence of the divine creation everywhere, always, and at the same time unknown to human consciousness. So my curiosity is this. If the divine creation is everywhere, always, how can it be unknown to our human consciousness? What are the clues to make us aware of that?
Well, see, that's what we talk about here. Consciousness is experience. What we're experiencing at a human level, this good and evil world of energy, obviously is not the kingdom of heaven on earth. And so the only conclusion that we can come to is we're not conscious of the divine creation because we're looking at a dualistic mental material universe with opposite polarities. And so you use the testimony of your corporeal senses in this model as the check engine light on the dashboard of your consciousness. If you're experiencing a good and evil world, then you must know you're not conscious of the divine creation. And this is what we like to talk about is, well, how do I change that? How do I change how I'm thinking? The term in the Bible was repent. It meant think differently.
So, Swami, I hear what you're saying, but to be devil's advocate here, I know there's going to be people out there saying, well, I have a good life. I have a great life. Everything's going wonderful. I had a great day today. So they're going to think if consciousness is experienced, then they must have this knowledge of the divine self in order to have this good day or this good life. What are your thoughts?
Well, there again, we have to look at it beyond the parentheses, as Joel Goldsmith says. What we're calling life, this mental material concept, isn't life. Life is eternal. It's changeless. It's perfect. It's whole. So even if you're having a great life at a human level, if you are not conscious of divine truth, then you're going to die in your sin. You will expire. The intention here is to know the truth that makes us free from the belief in mortality. Once we start to educate ourselves and we develop the faculty that enables us to perceive the divine creation, we will rise out of the belief in a finite mortal sense of existence. That would be a better interpretation of what it is that we're trying to do. You don't just want to fix the mortal sense of existence. You don't want another couple of years. You want to walk out of time, space, concept, belief, human will, personal sense, the idea of thinking, and rest in the knowledge I am the reflection of an indestructible principle. This will take you completely beyond the limitations of incarnation.
So we have to relink with the divine self. Like you said, link the form to the app, but you also said remain in the belief of a mortal sense of life. So can we do both? Can we relink to the divine self and have this sense of mortal life existence?
Well, to answer your question, no. As Jesus told us, you can't serve two masters. You can't be conscious of divine truth and at the same time be a finite mortal being. The way we get around this is once you have attained this level of consciousness, which will dispel the belief in a finite mortal sense of self, then you can tell the truth about the truth and then tell the truth about the lie. You no longer strive, struggle, seek, plan, or even want for anything on a mental material level because you understand the unreality of it. Just like light dispels darkness, truth and consciousness dispels the belief in a mortal sense of self. Darkness is not an opposing power to light, it's the absence of light. Mental material concept is not an opposing power to truth, it's the absence of truth. So once you know the truth, then of course you're not fooled by the mental material illusion.
So let's break down Mary Baker Eddy's statement that we have in our summary. I'm just going to read it again. You render the divine law of healing obscure and void when you weigh the human in the scale with the divine, or limit in any direction of thought the omnipresence and omnipotence of God. End of that quote. So Swami, let's explain what divine law of healing means.
The divine law is absolute goodness. It's eternal life without opposite. The word heal means to be whole. Spirit is the only self-existent, complete entity. You render that law of absolute wholeness when you weigh the human in the scale with the divine. The human is the mental material concept about the divine principle. It's duality. Everything at this level of consciousness is in half. In order for something to manifest, to appear, it splits from unity, manifests in half, and then leaves behind the complementary, unmanifested other part. What I would call the Trinity. You've got the manifested, the complementary, unmanifested, and the absolute. Matter, mind, and spirit. Of this, the only thing that's real or whole is spirit. And in the light of that spiritual fact, you lose the separation of the appearance. And the way that we experience something like this is when you look at something in a mirror. The image that is looking back at you, you know there's no life, truth, intelligence, or substance in that image. The same is true with this mental material concept. It's a reflection of the divine. The truth is in the spirit, not in the appearance. But when we incarnate, identity is all bound up in the appearance. And we have the choice. We can either accept that, or if we were educated enough, we could separate our identity from the appearance and reconnect to the spirit, wholeness. And that's basically what religion was in its original format. It was a system that enabled humans to do this. And why would you want to do that? Would be rise above the limits of the mental material experience, the good and evil world of energy. And you would abide in absolute goodness without opposite.
So the next curiosity would be the statement that we said in the summary: explore the possibilities found when truth in consciousness resolves things into thoughts and exchanges the objects of sense with the divine idea. So let's discuss, what do you mean by resolving things into thoughts?
Yeah, as we start to understand that this is a process. The first order is resurrecting the divine principle as the superior power of the universe. Then introducing methodology, things required to develop the faculty which links the mental material concept to the divine principle. To put things in perspective, we have this from Martha Wilcox, Healing, and I'll read it. The same as we sense a green horse while viewing a white horse through green glasses, likewise we sense perfect creation, man and the universe as matter deformed, diseased, insufficient, or dead, because we see through the lens of material sense. The imperfections we sense are no more conditions to be eradicated or removed from perfect creation than greenness was a condition to be eradicated or removed from the white horse. Unless we perceive that creation is perfect and spiritual now, we have no principle to demonstrate and no rule for its demonstration. You'll recognize that from Miscellany, page 242. End of quote. Now we have to reverse engineer this whole thing, which means resolve the physical into mental, and then exchange the objects of sense with the divine idea. This is what Mary Baker Eddy called the chemicalization that happens when we spiritualize thought as opposed to materialize it. It goes through this process. Without that, we wouldn't have the appearance of the miracle. You wouldn't have the ability to know the difference between being conscious of mental material energy as opposed to conscious of divine truth. So basically, what we have to do is be conscious of the divine creation. Then our conscious awareness of the invisible, intangible, divine omnipresence creates an inner environment of silence and stillness because spirit doesn't report in the mortal mind. In that silence and stillness, we watch, we wait, we listen, and we let divine mind acknowledge itself. This is what we would call sanctification. It is that point where divine mind acknowledges itself as you. This means you're no longer thinking with five corporeal senses, but you're beginning to let divine mind do its knowing in your awareness. Mortal mind thinks in terms of duality. Divine mind thinks in the absolute. Remember, it's whole. This is where the exchange takes place. You're no longer putting out duality. Divine mind is putting out the perfection of being, the divine image and likeness. You are reflecting the divine image. This is experienced as the objects of sense are now being exchanged for the divine idea. And consciousness is experienced, then you're looking for this coincidence between the human and the divine in your experience.
We're going to pause out of here to hear a word from our sponsor. Listeners, we'll be back with you in just a few moments. Kriya Yoga Asana class is a module fitting into the master plan, leading the practitioner to the experience of total consciousness by attuning the mind-body complex to the divine idea. A system of exercises designed to use the physical appearance to determine individual level of consciousness and degree of awareness, starting with the process of lengthening and strengthening muscles to bring bones into the position of internal support. We educate thought up to spiritual apprehension, because when spirit is cause, it calls into expression the beauty of holiness, making creation perfect. Mountain pose may not bring you truth in consciousness, but truth in consciousness must bring mountain pose. Visit the website www.ipdtransform.com. Namaste. Welcome back. For those who are just joining us, you're listening to The Voice of Yoga, and we are talking consciousness. We have a statement here from Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures. This can be found on page 150, lines 3 to 15, and I'll read it. Mind as far outweighs drugs in the cure of disease as in the cure of sin. The more excellent way is divine science in every case. Is materia medica a science or a bundle of speculative human theories? The prescription which succeeds in one instance fails in another, and this is owing to the different mental states of the patient. These states are not comprehended, and they are left without explanation except in Christian Science. The rule and its perfection of operation never vary in science. If you fail to succeed in any case, it is because you have not demonstrated the life of Christ, truth, more in your own life, because you have not obeyed the rule and proved the principle of divine science. End that quote. Swami, she seems to really lay it right out for us. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. The problem is we lost touch with what her discovery is. And so as a result, we don't trust the omnipresence of the divine principle. Just like what she says here, it's because you have not demonstrated the life of Christ. Most of us don't have any clue as to what the life of Christ is. What is the divine principle? And so we stay with the testimony of the corporeal senses as our only gauge for what we think life is. And once you overcome this belief, and you are willing to challenge what it is that we're doing, because you don't have to look very far to find that it isn't working, then all you have to do is start to find methodology that will enable you to first understand how this really works. Like she had said, this idea of a principle and a rule. The principle being spirit is all. The divine principle, the perfection of being, is all that's here. Life is perfect. Once you have a belief in the omnipresent divine principle, your belief in that principle, provided you are a faithful witness to it. The interesting thing about this is, man says, show, and I will trust. God says, trust, and I will show. So we have to have this willingness to take this leap of faith. You rely on the invisible, intangible, divine omnipresence. But you don't just do this with senseless optimism. I love what Mary Baker Eddy wrote in one of her writings, and I'll paraphrase it. For Jesus to walk water was science. Until poor humanity walks on water, for them to step out onto the Atlantic isn't wisdom or science. So you really want to educate yourself up to spiritual apprehension, and do it in small increments. Start with a belief in the divine creation. Also, understand that you are going to have to learn how to think differently. Understand there are 3 modes of mortal thought we have to master before we can walk reason through the open door of revelation. This will give you plenty you can work on before you try and demonstrate the principle.
So, Swami, we know the divine law of absolute goodness is the only power in the universe, and yet we have something here from Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures, page 183, lines 1 to 15, that may contest some of that. Will you read that for us?
Yeah, here it is. Truth makes all things possible to spirit, but the so-called laws of matter would render spirit of no avail and demand obedience to materialistic codes, thus departing from the basis of one God, one lawmaker. To suppose that God constitutes laws of inharmony is a mistake. Discords have no support from nature or divine law. However, much is said to the contrary. Can the agriculturist, according to belief, produce a crop without sowing the seed and awaiting its germination according to the laws of nature? The answer is no. Yet the scriptures inform us that sin or error first caused the condemnation of man to till the ground, and indicate the obedience to God will remove this necessity. Truth never made error necessary, nor devised a law to perpetuate error. End of quote. At some point, we have to make a decision. Am I willing to live under the government of duality, karmic law, material law, or do I want to be under the government of absolute goodness and eternal life? Because you can't be both. Just like she said, you will render the divine law of healing void and obscure. To demonstrate divine law with scientific certainty, first of all, we must be conscious of the divine principle, and then we have to be a faithful witness to it, which means we must know ourselves to be spirit. Spirit is one, it's whole, it's complete, it's not looking for anything. I want always obscures I am. But like we say, you can't be both. And the minute you take one bite of an apple from one of these trees, you're banished from Eden. That's the tolerance that you learn from the fall from Eden. It's nominal. If you are not pure of heart, pure of thought, and learn how to think with or let divine mind do its thinking in your awareness, then you will continue to be under karmic law, material law, which is the belief in two powers. To be liberated from this, we must be born of spirit, know ourselves to be incorporeal, perfect, out of time and space, everywhere, always. And not just say it, but know it, and then demonstrate it, prove it. Because of our ignorance of divine law, humanity has accepted the limitations of material law as the paradigm to govern direction. The major problem with this approach is it lacks principle. Without the benefit of the divine omnipresence as the truth of being, humanity is left in a never-ending, ever-ending cycle of death and rebirth. To break the spell, the principle must be understood and applied. And this is it. You can't apply it as a mortal being.
We have another passage from Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures, page 146, lines 4 to 12, and I'm going to read it. Because our systems of religion are governed more or less by our systems of medicine, the first idolatry was faith in matter. The schools have rendered faith in drugs the fashion rather than faith in deity. By trusting matter to destroy its own discord, health and harmony have been sacrificed. Such systems are barren of the vitality of spiritual power, by which material sense is made the servant of science and religion becomes Christ-like. End of the passage. So there's quite a lot here, but can you break this down for us?
Well, when you put it the way that she just did, the first idolatry is faith in matter. And you look at where the world is today, with our belief in all of these substances, circumstances, situations, you wonder why we're not demonstrating divine law with any kind of certainty is because we don't have the formula. We don't know the truth. We don't know ourselves in the way that we are known. And we're being led by the very same mind that can't bring forth the divine image. And so you do have to run the risk of what will happen when you do challenge the mental material concept today. Because you have to be strong enough to walk a solitary path. It's like these radio shows. Nobody really listens to them because they are so threatening to your personal sense of self. We're lulled into the belief that being spiritual is warm and fuzzy, but it dissolves the belief in the false sense of self. And so we're being driven by animal magnetism. Fear governs the world today. But once you know you are an eternal spiritual being, the reflection of an indestructible principle, you no longer fear this idea of being alone, because that's all there is. There's only one life, and it's perfect.
Swami, thank you for your insights for today's episode titled Rendering the Divine Law Void. Listeners, be sure to visit the website www.ipdtransform.com. On any of the pages, as you scroll down, you'll see several buttons there that you could press that would further your understanding. Swami, any final thoughts about today's episode?
Well, I would like to encourage people to join the Kriya Yoga Spiritual Advance, get the light in your soul, and reflect divine perfection. Namaste.
Thank you for listening to our podcast, The Voice of Yoga. This is Lisa Winton, along with Swami Jayananda, signing off. Have a wonderful Kriya Yoga realization. Namaste.